Hey guys, what's up? I just want to kind of give folks an idea of my coming out process. Today is May 6th. So in my intro video, I told you a little bit about who I am. Today, I kind of just want to talk about my process of coming out, my kind of self-realization, and then the coming out to kind of the world around me and that process. So that's what I'll be doing today. So here goes. About 6 years or so ago, I began grad school up at the University of Vermont for higher education and student affairs, and at that time I really kind of began to become exposed to an environment where folks questioned their gender and gender expression, gender identity, and this is a space that I hadn't been able to be a part of prior to this experience, and so it was really eye-opening and a pretty awesome experience for me. And so at that point I really started to ask myself a lot of questions that I kind of had already been asking myself but didn't really know how to ask myself. So I kind of asked myself those questions privately while also kind of doing the work at the same time as a professional. And so that's kind of a theme in the work that you'll see that I'll continue to talk about in a second. But anyway, in those 2 years and during my grad work, I kind of progressed in looking at my own gender identity and becoming more comfortable with kind of asking those questions and doing that research. Came into myself a little bit more with my own gender identity and got involved a little bit more with the research that I wanted to do with writing my own thesis around some aspects of gender and gender identity. Became a part of Translating Identity Conference and helping run that with students. And being exposed to a lot more opportunities that I didn't necessarily have before. So a lot of amazing things and opportunities there that kind of jet-setted me onto other things. After graduation, let me kind of take a step back. At that point, I kind of always kept it out on arm's length, saying, you know, this is the work that I'm doing professionally and through my grad program and what I want to do professionally in my line of work. It's not necessarily about me personally, it's more about the work that I'm doing. And so I was kind of able to keep it more about work and not about myself, which was kind of a coping mechanism, I think. And so, interesting, right? When I graduated, I moved to New York City and got a full-time job in res life and kind of got thrown into the deep end of student affairs and did a lot of the work that I was doing around social justice and specifically around LGBT advocacy, policy work, and other things that I wanted to be doing in pushing a progressive agenda of inclusive campuses forward. But again, through the lens of my work agenda and not really doing the self-work that I needed to be doing alongside doing the professional work that I was doing. And I needed to really be doing those two things at one time. I had worked a lot on my queer identity and had really felt very solid about that, but really hadn't worked a ton on my gender identity and gender expression, and really felt kind of like I was putting on a facade when it came to my expression in terms of gender. I really felt like I wasn't being honest about that. And that kind of became a theme for several years up until like the last year and a half or so. So I found that I really was having a difficult time being honest about my experience professionally when I wasn't fully being authentic in who I was personally. And I use a lot of personal experiences and my authentic self in my professional work. So when I moved up to Salem, Mass, for my job now, about a little over 2.5 years ago. Ah, my cat, hold on one second. I swear that's gonna happen every time I make a video. I should just put her in the other room. Anyway, so when I moved up to Salem, Mass to take on an RD role up here, I knew I was going to work in res life, but also wanted to take on more initiative on campus to make the campus more inclusive in regards to social justice initiatives, but also specifically LGBT specifically related issues on campus. And so what I was struggling again with was this whole idea of me putting all of myself and all of my authentic self into the work that I was doing, but not feeling like I was being truthful in the work that I was doing, because there was this piece of me that I wasn't being honest about. For the time that I had kind of initially explored my gender identity in grad school, to this point where I had first moved to Salem, I had kind of put my gender identity on the back burner. I had kind of put things down, kind of put things back into that back shelf, kind of that no one ever looks in, and it was always there. I always knew it was there, but I never. It was never on the forefront in my mind. I guess that's kind of a lie. It was always there. It was always there. It was always on my mind, but I never talked about it. Really, I never acknowledged it to anyone, really. Maybe with the exception of if like one or two people once in a great while. It was never a thing. And so I made it. I made it that way. And so that was really not good for my mind and my body, and that translated to a lot of things, which I think, is a whole other video that I'll make. Yeah, definitely. But I really kind of closeted that piece, really kept that under wraps for a really long time, years, and felt very uncomfortable and really had a really hard time admitting it to myself and thinking that it was something that could ever be something that I could be comfortable talking about. Again, funny because something that I'm comfortable doing advocacy work for other people and making sure that other people have a voice at the table and feel comfortable existing at institutions. Like, that's my full-time work. Like, that's what I'm doing, and like not being able to and wanting to do that for myself, pretty interesting. So about 1.5 years ago, the best way I can describe it is kind of like being on a train that's coming, and you're either going to get on it and you're going to deal with the fact that it's coming, and you're going to get on it and like figure out a way to drive it, or steer it, or whatever you do with trains. I'm not educated with trains. Or you're going to get run over by it. And so what I chose to do was get on the train and figure out how the hell to steer the train or drive the train or whatever the fuck you do to trains. So I chose to do that, and it took a while for me to do that, and it kind of came in different waves. First it was kind of like admitting to myself, and that took a really long time, and then kind of came in waves to coming out to other people. So I kind of came out in a little bit of a process. It kind of started with myself and then moved to different pieces that I was comfortable with. It was obviously kind of about safety in the beginning, and what I was comfortable with in the environment that I had, and kind of also about the people that I had the most to lose with kind of, so like my family, I had the most amount to lose with them and coming out with them to me, and because they're very important to me. So also with like my very immediate close friends, like they're very important to me. So I had a lot to lose with them too. So it was harder to come out to them. At work, not so much. Like whatever. It's hard. Obviously, it's never easy to come out, and you never know who's going to support you, who's not, who's going to make it hard, who's going to treat you differently. I don't want to trivialize that experience, but also like it was harder to tell some people over others, obviously, because of their importance in my life and losing them and whatnot. So anyway, so not this last fall, but fall of 2013, I started doing a lot of self-work and kind of walking through my own self-admittance stuff and really diving into like kind of self-admittance, like, yeah, this is happening. I got to get on the train, figure stuff out. And then I started making steps towards making things happen, and moving towards like making steps, I'm repeating myself, making steps to like action steps, if you will. So in May of 2014, I started changing pronouns at work, and so I went from using she, her pronouns to using they, them pronouns at work with coworkers. That was a little bit of a challenge, but overall, it ended up working out. It's a different conversation for a different time, but did that all summer. At the end of the summer, I had some really important conversations with a lot of really close people to me, particularly two really close friends, and they were just like undying support and love, and they're kind of like the two people that pushed me over the edge in regards to kind of make the next step. And so at that point I chose to move forward with a name change, and I chose to make that name change with work and to come out to my close college friends in general. So I came out with came out in general as a trans identified person, masculine of center, to my friends, my close-knit college friends, who were incredibly supportive and amazing, and I love them and continue to be really supportive, and I couldn't ask for a better situation. So I think the people that know me well and that are like really close to me on certain levels weren't surprised. And then I think there are people who probably were a lot more surprised than others, and I mean, whatever. So that was that, and so I chose at that point not to tell anyone in my family, and so it was really work, my close friends that I interact with kind of on a daily basis, so friends from college, and then like friends from grad school that were that I interact with really regularly, and other friends from work, coworkers or whatever. I didn't really come out at work because I didn't feel necessary to do that. Like as an announcement, I integrated it into my work when I was talking about the work that I was doing when it was relevant. So like when I was talking about like Trans 101 workshops that I was running, I would talk about my own identity development when it was appropriate, and so I would do that. But I never like was like, hey, I am this or whatever. So that was something that like I didn't feel like I needed to do. But anyway, so all of fall I went through this kind of process of working with a therapist from like, I was pretty angry all of like, so I came out in this one context of my life, and then was kind of living a double life with my family that I was really close with. I've always been close with my family. They're a huge piece of my life. And to not kind of have them know this whole other aspect of me was really, really challenging. And I felt like I was being unauthentic and untruthful, and really kind of like, it was bad, and kind of led me into this like kind of spiral depression, really anxious all the time. I wasn't sleeping. It was getting to my health. I was becoming really an angry person when I would go home every time I would go home for holidays or just to see my family. I would become really angry and kind of resent my family for like not magically picking up on the fact that you know, I had all this shit going on when like my family had a lot going on and had a lot to deal with, and like my stuff was not the only thing that they needed to deal with. So stupid shit. Like I should have probably told them that there was a lot going on with me, and I didn't do that. And so I wish I had kind of changed that. I wish I chose not to do that intentionally, because I did not want to take away from the other situations that were happening, because I didn't want to overtax my family, specifically my parents. I felt like they were overcapacitated with what they were handling at the time. And so it was a really rough fall, not being able to be honest with my family, but I worked with a therapist around what it would like to come out to my family. And at that point in time, I really could not imagine being able to come out to my family. During that time, I had a really difficult time imagining what it would be like to admit some of these things to my family. And this led to a lot of like feeling hopelessness and feeling depressed and feeling angry and feeling anxious all the time. And I wouldn't sleep at night, and my blood pressure was skyrocketed all the time. I would wake up in the middle of the night and get panic attacks and anxiety attacks, and then not be able to sleep for the rest of the night. And so I'd be running on like 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night, and then I really wouldn't be able to function at work the next day, which I really need to be able to do because my job is crazy sometimes. And so what it really came down to at like in the end was kind of my health. The coming out process for me, it came down to like the fact that I could no longer live the way that I was living. I had high blood pressure. I was not sleeping. I was stressed out and anxious all the time, and I was alienating myself from everything that I loved all the time. And so while a lot of those things kind of seem like common things, they were really like big threats to my health. And so since I have come out, a lot of those things have turned around. But so I made a lot of plans with my therapist on kind of what it would look like to come out. And back in the fall, I had no idea, like, and it made me very anxious to think about what it would be like. And a lot of what created those anxious moments around what that would look like is the fear of the unknown. And like what my therapist walked me through is like, what is the worst case scenario? What is the worst case scenario of your mom telling you like her whole thoughts on this? What is the worst case scenario of happening of what once your family knows? What can happen? And I really had to ask myself whether or not it was worth it. And I think there comes a time from the day-to-day stress of not being yourself and pretending to be somebody that you're not, that that stress outweighs the risk of having to tell these people that you are going to be a little bit different than the person that they have known you to be, and that they have to kind of adjust the expectations of who they have known you as for potentially their whole life or your whole life, and that they're going to have to be patient, and that they're going to have to still love you no matter, what happens, but that it's going to be okay, and that you're still the same person, and that you're in it together, and that you'll get through it, and just ask them to kind of walk alongside you, and that at the end of the day, like, that is so much more worth the risk than to kind of live every day to be something that you're not. And that point came for me, and so I decided in early March to come out to my parents, and I did that, and I came out to my mom. Originally with my therapist, I knew like I was going to have a really hard time coming up with the words that I wanted to say, so she suggested that I write down the stuff that I wanted to say, because sometimes I have a hard time with words, especially when I'm emotional or nervous. I tend to not think of the words that I want to say, or they get mumble jumbled, and I get nervous and turn red, and things get awkward. And so anyway, I wrote down like this 4-page document, right? And I didn't think I was gonna have to use it, but anyway, I wrote this whole thing down, and like I get on the phone with my mom, and I'm like, I get this feeling of like one random day that like it's like that day, it's like a vibe thing, like I just have to do it, and it's like a Sunday, and like it's not like it was just on a whim or it was unintentional. It was just like I had been waiting for so long, and like it was just that day, and it needed to happen, and like I just felt it, and it just needed to go, and so I did it. And I called her, and I was like, I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you about some stuff that's going on for me. And my mom is an interesting person. She is probably the most interesting person I have ever met in my life, which probably explains me in a lot of ways. She is the strongest person I've ever met in my life, but also, I can't even explain her in words. Like she's so strong, so matter of fact, tell you how it is, but also like pull yourself up by your bootstraps, kid. It's gonna be all right. Nurturing and like love you unconditionally kind of person. Like she's just so hard to explain in a description. And so I can't keep it together, and so I start bawling, of course, because like every time I talk to my mom about something, like it's like I can talk to her about like lint, like dryer lint, and I'm like, oh, lint, and like it's just like I freaking bawl. And so I start bawling, and I'm like, okay, well, I can't seem to get it together, so I'll read you this thing that I have written. And so like while I'm bawling, originally though, she's like trying to calm me down. She's like, listen, it's going to be okay, like calm down. She's like the one that's like being the boss in the situation of like, it's gonna be okay, like calm yourself down, being amazing in the situation, like just purely awesome, and taking charge, and just letting me have the space to be like vulnerable, but also like taking the space of being like, I support you, it's okay, take a deep breath. So anyway, I start the conversation, and like I do that by starting to read the document. I get a paragraph in, and I'm like barely finished reading the first paragraph, and all she does is interject with saying, I know. Like, I know. And I just stop and I'm like, what? She's like, I know. Like, you know, just swoops in with her mom cape and is just like, I know. And I'm like, you know what? And she's like, I know. You haven't been comfortable in your skin for years, and I don't really know how to talk about it because I don't have the language, and I'm not really like educated or whatever on the subject, but like I know that you're transgender or something along those lines, like something. And like I can't describe to you in words what that felt like. To know the fact that she knew on some level what my experience was before I even had to tell her. To know that she had somewhat of a knowledge base. And that she could just interject and just be like, I got you. Like, I have your back. For me, it was probably one of the most meaningful moments in our relationship. Because it was really one of those moments where it was like nobody had to say anything, but she was kind of like, I got you. And there didn't need to be terminology. There didn't need to be an educated understanding. There just needed to be like this understanding between a mother and a kid, and that was our experience. And like I can't express how privileged I am to have had that experience. I know a lot of people haven't had that experience, and I am beyond privileged and lucky to have had that. And I know that it's not all going to be easy, and since then it hasn't necessarily been that, but like that first initial experience was incredible, and I can't and wouldn't change that for anything in the entire world, and it means so much to me. I initially had that conversation with my mom. My mom kind of had an additional conversation with my dad. And so, who kind of, I'm guessing kind of had initial conversations with my mom. So I'm guessing they both kind of sort of knew already, but, what my dad's kind of synopsis of his story is that he just doesn't want my life to be any harder than it already is, because it hasn't necessarily always been an easy journey already. So, and I get where he comes from with that saying, but, you know, when I talked to him about all of this, is, you know, what I said is that it was hard enough already, and by me becoming more authentically myself, it's going to become a lot easier, I think. And if not, at least I'll be being honest about it, which feels a lot better already. So from there, initially really amazing experience with coming out to my parents. From there, I came out to my sister. My sister was amazing, ridiculously amazing, was like 100%, I'm in your camp, I'm on your train, I 100% support you. If I didn't love you before enough, like, I love you even more now, if that makes sense. Like, I love you, I loved you before, and I love you even more now. So like, just that sense of like unconditional love, and I'll love you no matter what, and whatever I can do to support you. So like, we've been through a lot, especially within the last couple of years, and like nothing that can happen will separate us. So that's kind of really amazing. And I have a really close-knit family of about 10 or so, and so I came out to my aunt and uncle. So my mom, dad, my sister, and then next were my aunt and uncle, who are really close to me, like my second set of parents. I came out to my aunt. Not sure, I haven't talked to my uncle yet, but I know he'll be fine, because like they come like in a pair. My aunt kind of already knew too. She's been really supportive, She was just kind of like, I don't care what you look like or what we call you. You're you, and I love you, and that's all that matters. And we're family, and love is unconditional. And so I've had a really privileged and amazing coming out process with all my friends and my family, and work for the most part. I've just had a really great experience. You know, there have been some blips here and there, and people have made it difficult for me in some ways. And I know that there are parts and pieces and things that I experience every day that are levels of microaggressions that that don't just, you know, go unexperienced. That will always happen, and that is always tiring. But that is something that, you know, you sort of on some level get used to, kind of not, but overall it's been a really amazing experience. I think as I start to move forward with transition, I will experience a little bit more pushback or a little bit more of a difficult time as I have more conversations around what transition looks like and what I choose or choose not to do. Because I think, you know, there are levels of comfortability with that, and so I think some of those conversations will be more challenging than others, but we shall see. I think I'm also really cognizant of the ways in which a transition and the coming out process will affect the people around me, and the way that I am interpreted by the people that are around me. I have been somebody who is always cognizant of the way that people incept me as a person, and the way that I impact the spaces around me. I just always have been. I'm a really empathic person, and so I think that's not going to be any different as I go through this process. And so I think it'll be interesting to document that process as I go through it. It's a little bit about my process. I would be happy to answer any questions if you have them. Please feel free to post them underneath this video. I think that's all I have for today. Please subscribe to my videos and my channel. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter, trying to build up my following and try to inspire some people. So thanks for watching.